Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Hindu's webinars on important topics in education. This webinar is held on every Saturday, and this week we are taking up a discussion on the University Grants Commission (UGC's) draft learning outcomes based curriculum framework (LOCF). We would call it as sort of draft curriculum. It's for the undergraduate courses in anthropology, chemistry, commerce, economics, geography, home science, mathematics, physical education, and political science. This draft curricula, the draft which was released a month ago on August 20th, exactly a month ago, has created a widespread discussion among our academia, our students, and political circle over its focus on ancient wisdom. Today, September 20th, is the last date for the stakeholders to submit their feedback on the draft curriculum. While the UGC has maintained that the draft curricula are based on the National Education Policy of 2020, which promotes inclusion of Indian knowledge system in each subject, the critics of these curricula said that the Union government and the UGC are walking backwards as the LOCF sort of prescribes unsubstantiated and unscientific study materials for undergraduate students. The framework has suggested exploring contributions of Indian mathematicians, including the inclusion of Bhartiya philosophy in subjects such as commerce, in traditional Indian beverages in chemistry, and dharmic thoughts in economics. So while the LOCF in chemistry starts with the salutation to goddess Saraswati, the commerce curriculum suggests that the colleges should teach Kautilya's Arthashastra. B.D. Savarkar's Indian War of Independence has found a place in the reading list for the course on Bharatiya struggle for independence. So, to discuss these issues, what is the importance and what is the relevance of this draft curriculum? We have four eminent people with us today. We have Professor K. N. Ganesh, who is the chairman of Kerala Council of Historical Research. He's a former professor with the History Department of Calicut University in Kerala. He has also been a member of the Kerala Education Commission and has headed the Kerala Shastra Sahitya Parishad, which is a prominent organization in the state, which is aimed to spread the scientific timber in the society. Professor Ganesh completed his PhD in history from Jawaharlal Nehru University in Delhi and is an active voice in the cultural and political sphere of Kerala. He will present his views, of course, on the subject, and he will also present the Kerala government's view on the subject, because it's important that the Kerala government has formed a panel headed by eminent economist Professor Prabhat Patnaik to look at this draft curriculum. We also have Professor Navneet Sharma, probably the only educationist in this panel. Professor Sharma teaches at the Department of Education, Central University of Himachal Pradesh. He has a master's degree in education, philosophy and sociology. He did his pre-doctoral and doctoral research in education from the University of Delhi. He's a member. He's also a member of the Karnataka State Education Policy Commission's task force. His areas of interest are in education theory, social science education, Dalit, and gender studies. He has published a number of research articles, 30 research articles in journals of international repute, and also writes for newspapers like The Hindu, various other newspapers. So before he had also joining the Central University, he taught the Department of Education in Delhi University, Reddy Sriram College, etc. So we have the peculiarity of this panel is also that we have two prominent student leaders here today in this panel. We have Adarsh M. Saji, who is the national president of the Left-Leaning Student Federation of India. Saji has a law background. He's a legal student in Delhi, and he has been actively campaigning against. I saw some of his posts that he was speaking in various campuses against LCOF and making resolutions against LCOF in various central and state universities. We also have Shravan B. Raj. Shravan B. Raj is the National Secretary of Akhil Bharati Vidyarthi Parishad, which is the Students Front of Sangh Parivar. So when I contacted the ABVP, their leaders told me Shravan is the best person to speak on this issue because he is their link between the UGC, various government departments, and all, because he's the person, because he's a researcher in the politics of curriculum. So he's a researcher from the University of Hyderabad in the Department of Education. Mr. Raj is a main campaigner of the ABVP on issues involving curriculum and pedagogy. So I welcome all of you to this webinar and our viewers on behalf of the Hindu. So let me start with Dr. Sharma. Dr. Navneet Sharma, what is your take on this LOCF? What is this? As an education, what is your reading? Is this education or politics? Can you please explain what is this?
Before I go to talk about the political agenda, I'll just like to talk about that. What do we mean by learning outcomes and how they are different from aims of education? We can say that earlier also the education had aims where there are people from education background. They will say that the lesson plans that we wrote had specific objectives and general objectives. So what is wrong in having learning outcomes? So why we can't have learning outcomes? But probably we are missing that understanding that education is not about an individual's learning capacity and capability only. Education is a process where there are many socio-cultural and politico-economic factors that affects one's learning and construction of knowledge. It is not in the vacuum. Education does not work in the vacuum that there we can think of some learning outcomes. For example, let's begin with what they argue when they are saying that we need learning outcomes. At the face, or what is at the backside will come at the later. For example, they suggest that the classes will be more focused, the teacher will not digress, the students will have a direction, and there will be some essential concepts which are not taught in the class and they'll be brought to the class, and it will also increase learning, it will bring more flexibility. These are very wonderful ideas, and this whole ideas got written in one of the document. UGC these days is on a spree. Every day we have a new document, and so the UGC released this document, which is known as National Higher Education Qualification Framework, and this story begins from NHEQF. It's fine that every country should aspire to be a Vishwaguru. Why only India should aspire to be a Vishwaguru? And every country like India struggles to break away from colonial impact, and they want us to break away from Machiavellian thought, and they want to decolonize the whole education. And with these noble ideas in the mind, what they have done, that they have copied from Dublin descriptors. I'll just tell you the brief history. If you read this document, National Higher Education Qualification Framework, it is a plagiarized document. The government has copiously copied from Bologna process. There was one process, this happened in Europe. There were series of interministerial conferences. What happened that Europe had many engineering colleges across many countries. So they wanted some parity, that who will be employable and who will not be employable, and there should be a parity between what is taught to learners in Europe. So they had a series of interministerial conferences in Bologna. Bologna is a town in Italy. And then another conference happened where these outcomes were drafted. So they are known as Dublin descriptors. So if you Google Dublin descriptors and you read learning outcomes, what the UGC is suggesting, you will find that it is so amazing that to indigenize the Indian knowledge and to push Indian knowledge, we have copied what a European draft is already suggesting. So to break away from the colonialism, we are again going to European countries to tell us what to do with our education system. And another irony is that all this happened in early 2000. So the UGC did not realize that there is a time gap of 25 years now. So what these Dublin descriptors are, they are the learning outcomes which were devised in the early 2000. They have copied it from there. Like National Higher Education Qualification Framework is a very problematic document. We may not want to talk about what other problems with this document and other documents that every day MHRD or Ministry of Education is releasing every day. I just want to point out that what are the contradictions with the idea of learning outcome. Like, for example, it is been drum beaten about that we should be child centric. Okay, child centric pedagogy and constructivism is something which has arrived at the scene, and there's lots of literature to suggest that we should be child centric. But when you are designing outcome, these outcomes will be behavioral in nature, and behaviorist psychology and behavioralism itself has been discarded in the past. So what is this idea of behavioral outcomes? Can we have an outcome which can be always measurable? For example, if you teaching someone history, do you believe that it will be always a time that someone always will recall who was the father of the Aurangzeb? No. Teaching history, history gives you a sense to differentiate between myth and fact and factoid. Probably they don't want us to distinguish between myth and fact and factoid. So probably they are defining the learning outcome, that what should be the outcome of a history class. It is fine that you want to decide the direction of the class, but no, it's not the job of the teacher to tell the student to think in what direction. What we are supposed to do is to tell our students to think what they think should be left independent to them. There cannot be an outcome, like it has to, like what will happen when we'll have these learning outcomes, there will be a sense of accountability. The teacher would be held against if that outcome is not achieved. The student will also be held responsible when that outcome will not be achieved. Like when we had aims of education is a generic idea. Like education itself is an idea, that why we want education, because we dream that one day we'll have a society which will be operation free, which will be communalism free, where we all have these aims. And probably all generations and civilizations have designed a school to achieve that only. But you can't have a pre-decided outcome, in the sense that this outcome will be, and look at the outcomes the way they are designed. Like for example, one of the outcomes says that a student should be aware in the first semester, and in the second semester she should be able to express herself, and in third semester she should be able to spread it. When someone is expressing, is she not spreading it? And how would you know that if she is not expressing, that she is not aware of the, like, there is many a flaws with this whole idea of learning outcome. This is not only a politically driven idea, it's a pedagogic disaster which is going to happen in our classes. That is what the concern is, that these pedagogical disasters are going to ruin that. Already we have too many problems, like though they began with the NEP, the root cause of all these, but there are many other problems which are happening with the pedagogy in the classroom. This pedagogical adventure with defining learning outcomes with whatever ideological tint is going to snub the creativity. Like if you say that there should not be any digression in the class, like digressions is what creates new knowledge. If we keep on repeating and harping upon the previous knowledge, we won't have any new knowledge. All inventions, all discoveries, all literature, all music is a digression from the established norm. So we need to have more digressions, we need to have more dissensions, we need to have more dialogue, we need to have more debate in our classrooms. You can't just pre-decide everything that this is what going to happen in our classes, and this is what a teacher is supposed to do, this is what a student is supposed to do, this is what the text she is supposed to read, and this is what she is supposed to write in exam. If you are pre-deciding everything, probably we believe that human beings have turned into orangutans. Given a chance, if an orangutan taps on 5 billion times on this keypad of the laptop, probably he can also write some Shakespearean dialogue. So do we think what education system we are designing for? So probably this is what the problem largely from the perspective of education and pedagogy is. Like it's more problematic for teacher students interaction. It's more problematic for thinking new. It's more problematic for being innovative. It's more problematic for being creative. And with all these goals and making more teacher centric, government centric, ideology centric learning outcomes pre given to students and teachers, probably this will create havoc in coming time very soon. Thank you.
Thank
That's
you,
what
thank
I.
you, thank you, thank you, Dr. Sharma. Professor Ganesh, Dr. Sharma was explaining that this is going to be a pedagogic disaster. Kerala government was one of the first governments to raise their objections against this LOCF. So, what are the premises on which you are preparing rejoinder to this LOCF? Have you already sent it? So, because today is the last date, there were also complaints that 1 month is not enough to read this bulk of materials UGC has published. So, I mean, have you sent it to the UGC, and what are the premises on which you have built your argument against LOCF?
No, we have not sent this thing as such because Professor Patnaik and the others who are involved in this are working on it. It is quite possible that we will be sending it today or tomorrow, I mean, depending on whether it is completed or not. But I can only I can only present some of the premises which some of us have formed on the basis of that our own understanding of the draft curriculum that has been circulated so far. Uh, One is that there are three things involved in it. First of all, I will say that you asked the question about education and politics. I think that education has something to do with value systems, and therefore, any educational framework will have to incorporate into it some of the value systems which has been actually been formulated by the government, whoever is actually devising the curriculum. In this sense, in the government of India had been so far until recently, they have been following a value framework which has included things like secularism, democracy, uh, social justice, and also hello,
Yes,
am
sir,
I
please go.
audible?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. Yes.
Social justice and some of the other features of the constitution, which has been there as a premise or some kind of a background value system for all the educational curricula that have been formed until recently. Now, the point here is that NEP 2020 dispense with most of this value system as a whole and introduce something called culture and something called, particularly something called Indian culture into it, which they did not really specify as to what they meant by it, except for making some, side statements like they're harking back to the older tradition or Indian society or Indian systems of that kind, etc. Now, the point is that once the curriculum has been brought to us, there has been some discussion on the framework that has been given to a paper called Indian Knowledge Systems, which has been debated inside Kerala also, and Kerala government as well as the Higher Education Council has decided to replace the Indian knowledge system by what they call as a Kerala knowledge system, and they have circulated already a kind of a syllabus as well as a textbook in that matter. I'm not going into that syllabus or textbook for the present because I think more interesting things is actually coming out from the draft curriculum itself. One thing about draft curriculum is that in almost all papers, that is, I looked into anthropology, I looked into commerce, economics, political science, and also some bit on chemistry and other science subjects also. Here, what they seem to be doing is to in fact, develop a syllabus on the basis of what is called the contemporary knowledge on all these subjects. Of course, there may be differences of opinion regarding what that knowledge means. Probably we may have differences of opinion regarding the type of knowledge that they want to introduced in economics or political science. There could be debates on that. I'm not going into that. But what is happening is that here I am also harping back to what exactly Professor Sharma was saying just now. They have also introduced papers or courses in which the what they call as Indian culture or what is called Indian knowledge has been brought into syllabus as a kind of a course framework equivalent to what is called the modern knowledge. So there is no distinction between what is called the cultural framework and as well as the modern knowledge. Both are introduced in the same platform without any distinction among themselves, which means that a student who is studying a particular course, let us say economics, will have to learn Arthashastra of Kautilya in the same way as she is learning microeconomics or macroeconomics of the modern times. Now, without even going into the distinction between the context or conjuncture in which Arthashastra of Kautilya was framed, and also the possible relevance of the various dictats of Arthashastra of Kautilya, which probably hark back to, let us say, 2nd century BC or 2nd century of the Common Era. From there, she will have to learn the thing in 21st century, where probably much of the injunctions in the Arthashastra of Kautilya will have no relevance at all, in that sense. Similarly, there is also a paper based on what is called dharma, principles of dharma, what is called purusharthas inside the same economics, this thing, where dharma, artha and kama and moksha are introduced as purusharthas, and the economic practices of the ancient times on the basis of this purusharthas are introduced in the same vein, as the modern 21st century economics is introduced. Which means that there is no distinction again between the purusharthas of, let us say, 4th century or 3rd century CE and then the type of things that we do in the 21st century. There is no difference. Similarly, there is also a paper, for example, in the commerce, which is a very interesting paper, which is on temple trade. Now, trading in the temple is something that is taking place in the 8th century or 10th century or 12th century. And the trading in the temple takes place in a very, very different context from the type of trade the market or the market centers today. Which means, and also there is no distinction again between the type of market. There is no concept to the market that has been introduced in 8th century or 12th century, the type of market that was actually prevailing in 8th century or 12th century. Instead, they are being equated fully with what exactly is going on in 21st century. And the student is unable to distinguish between any of this because there is no historical premise or anything of that kind given in the same market center. That is another thing. Similarly, in anthropology is probably, I would say, one of the most atrocious papers that has been introduced, where, for example, racist theory has been brought in. And this racist theory, there is a separate paper on, again, racism is a very, very problematic paper. When racist theory of that kind, 19th century racist theory has been completely dismissed today, even among the anthropologists, the same theory is brought in as a paper. That is a different issue. But the point here is that here we find another paper there, where Tridosha of Ayurveda, Vata, Pitta and Kapha, are being brought in as racial categories to distinguish between people and trying to distinguish between different sets of people on the basis of these three doshas and try to identify separate kind of racism on the basis of Ayurveda. I don't know whether any Ayurveda physician will agree with this kind of racist reasoning of Ayurveda principles. This thing is brought in anthropology paper, which is a separate paper which is being introduced. So what is happening is that the knowledge that has been probably was taking place sometime before in the 2nd century, 3rd century Common Era, which probably is rejected by modern science or rejected by modern scientific thinking or political thinking or many of the economic thinking, they have been actually brought back into this curriculum as separate papers, and then the student is made to learn in the same vein as the particular student is learning the modern science or modern politics or modern economics. That is one. Another thing is that similarly, we have got papers which have been introduced in the modern period, as Mr. Jiggish himself was pointing out to the introduction of Savarkar. There is a separate paper on Savarkar in political science degree, where there is a separate paper not only on Savarkar in political degree, there is also a separate course on Deen Dayal Upadhyaya. Now, I don't really, Deen Dayal Upadhyaya is a major RSS ideologue, which we know, but the type of introduction, contribution that Deen Dayal Upadhyaya made to the contemporary political science is something that is totally totally outside any kind of theoretical or any kind of political position that can be taken. Instead of that, we have got this Deen Dayal Upadhyaya's paper being introduced in the same way as contemporary political sciences courses are introduced, which means that the student is going to take up the integral humanism, whatever it means, of Deen Dayal Upadhyaya, and also try to learn it in the same way as possibly contemporary political scientists are also learned, which means that there is no distinction again there in this whole thing. Therefore, if, for example, Deen Dayal Upadhyaya is introduced and Savarkar is introduced, we have got the interesting case of Jawaharlal Nehru being introduced as a socialist, along with Ram Manohar Lohia. Again, a problematic this thing. Of course, we can say that Jawaharlal Nehru can have socialist pretensions, but equating him with Ram Manohar Lohia and Jayaprakash Narayan and introducing him in the same paper is a problematic thing. And again, we find that we don't find any reference to a particular person like Maulana Azad, for example. Maulana Abul Kalam Azad does not find any reference anywhere in a paper anyway. So which means that a section of the people who are Muslim scholars are actually eliminated from the whole thing. And instead of that, we have got, people like the Deen Dayal Upadhyaya finding a place in a separate course, which creates problems again. And finally, this means that if, for example, I am here quoting Professor Sharma's point of view. Now the point is that learning outcomes are very important, and learning outcomes are actually, as Professor Sharma correctly pointed out, it is actually being brought in as a precondition for knowledge. Once learning outcomes are being brought in as a precondition for knowledge, and courses of this kind, which does not allow any critical reasoning or any kind of historicity is being introduced, even the student doesn't know that, for example, a particular what you call chemical or other kind of experiment that was done, let us say in 3rd century, or a particular kind of thing like dharma and artha and kama and motor was actually tried out sometime in 3rd century CE. These are unknown to the student, and they are actually learning them as he pointed out, behaviorally, as learning outcomes, which means that they become bites of knowledge, which has no meaning at all. And this bites of knowledge will be taught and learned by a particular student, along with, for example, other kinds of bites of knowledge which they are learning, which means that there is no distinction between these bites of knowledge, and which means that myth, along with science, and also historical information, which probably has something to do with history, along with contemporary information, are being taught in the same fashion, and or they are actually sold as bites of knowledge, which the student will have to reproduce for in their learning outcomes. Which means that there is a surreptitious way in which knowledge that has been discarded actually are brought back, and they are being introduced in the same vein as contemporary knowledge, which means that it makes a travesty of knowledge. It makes a travesty of acquisition of knowledge also. And this is the real problem of the draft curriculum. That's what I feel. So which means that it's not only a question about bringing back Indian culture. That is not the only thing that is happening, which is probably very important, definitely. But it's not a question of bringing back Indian culture. It is also a question of bringing back Indian culture in the same vein as the contemporary knowledge systems. And therefore, there is a question of non-distinction between what is actually archaic, redundant, and should be discarded, along with the present-day knowledge, This means that you are actually making a travesty of education itself. That is precisely the problem which I find with the draft curriculum that is being presented today. And I'm sure that we don't know about other courses that are being offered. There is physics and mathematics. All these courses are to come afterwards. We'll find the same thing repeating itself there, where, for example, same kind of travesty of knowledge is being introduced with non-distinction between what exactly has passed and probably rejected and what exactly is current today,
Thank you.
which means that you have got a very difficult situation in education. That's what I feel.
Thank you, Professor Ganesh. Let me come to Mr. Shravan. Shravan, you have heard both the professors speaking about it. Like both have pointed about towards several inherent issues with this LOCF, and that it is not student centric. Somebody else is deciding what a student should learn. Like it is not a decentralized approach towards education. So, as a student leader, I know ABVP has largely in support of the national education policy, and particularly introducing the Indian knowledge system in this manner in the curricula. So, as a student leader and as a researcher in education, what are your views on this LOCF?
Okay, first of all, namaste to all the co-panelists. So here, when we are talking about the curriculum revision or syllabi, so there are two unfoldment specifically happens when it comes to the curriculum development. So one is the to update the existing content, as well as the other domain is to add the essential knowledge for the core subject. So these are the two things when we discuss when we talks about the curriculum development at its core. So when coming to the recent draft LOCF, it's clear that even the draft document says that the draft is trying to integrate the Indian knowledge system to the curriculum. So here, integration of the Indian knowledge system can't be considered as a sole different compartment, because here IKS is meant to be integrated to all the subjects of the, whether it is sciences, social sciences, or humanities. So when we talk in the 21st century, even everyone will feel that okay, IKS, Indian knowledge system. So are they trying to actually bring the ancient type of education to the 21st century? The answer is no. The idea is the amalgam of the present and the past, the integration of the modern methodology along with the Indian knowledge system. That is the sole idea and the core purpose of this curriculum revision. And when it comes to the revision, being an student and being a student who researched in the curriculum, so I have traveled different states for my research area. I have discussed with the many professors and even to the student community. And if you ask the same question, are your curriculum updated? Are the recent trends are being included in the curriculum? Are you getting connected to the knowledge what you are getting from a classroom? If you ask any of these questions to the teachers or the students, the answer you will get is no. Because even now our curriculums which we are following, whether it is the state or the central university, it's not up to date. First thing, are the recent trends being incorporated in the curriculum? We should say no. Because we always try to relate our thing, right? Being a student, I always try to relate my academia to my life always, so that it will give more effectiveness to what I learned. So when it comes to the education system, here I was going through the skill oriented courses offered in the draft curriculum of the chemistry. So in that, interestingly, they have specifically mentioned as an elective program, they are mentioning about the mushroom culture technology, food processing and bakery. So through these kind of small courses, a student who are enrolled in an higher education program will have some interest. Okay, I'm learning something and I can relate to my day-to-day life. so that we can develop an student-centric curriculum. Okay, every time we used to say that, okay, earlier it was a teacher-centric curriculum, and now from the last few years we have transformed into a student-centric curriculum. So what does it mean by student-centric curriculum? Student-centric curriculum, it always not meant that, okay, we are having freedom to learn, we are having the option of choosing the courses, but there is a say for us even in the curriculum construction too, and that is missing in our academia. And through this draft curriculum, we everyone has got an opportunity to have a say what we have to learn. This is one aspect. And when come to the academic discourse, it's not a new trend that even from the 1960s onwards, when the NCRT syllabus got revised, the curriculum controversy started in our country. It's not a new thing that, okay, over a curriculum a controversy is happening. So every time there are 2-3 critical questions arises in front of an academician or a researchers. So one is the what is an official knowledge is, it's always a question mark in front of us. And is the education system neutral? This is another question which is in front of us, that we will be answering in the journey of our academic life. So taking the higher education scenario of India, as Dr. Navneet Sharma was talking about, it's about the decolonizing project. Because we are still in the colonial hangover. When we take any of the social science subject or the humanities subjects, we can see an global narrative or the global educational content in our academic sphere. So what we are lacking? We are lacking an India-centric or the Bharat-centric perspective of all these aspects. So by the revision of this draft or the introduction of this LOCF, it doesn't say that this is an rejection of the Western knowledge. It doesn't even talk about and even I'm totally against the rejection of the whole Western knowledge. It's about the integration or the balancing of the Indian and the Western knowledge, which is talking in the draft document. And this is just an exercise of filling the gaps what we had in the discussion. So these are my observations, and talking about the few of the subjects which I have noted. Because when we learn the political science or sociology, we always lies into the theories of the Western centric ideas. So why can't we have an India centric thoughts, especially when it comes to the economics? When I was talking with the few of the economic professors in the last few months as part of my research too, they always say that, okay, our economics is bit Keynesian oriented theories or bit of the Marxian oriented theory. So it's not about discarding these theories. So as a balancing factor, why can't we learn about the Kautilya's Arthashastra? When talking about the Indian economics too, our Indian economic story start from the post-independence period, but there is a history behind that. So these were some of the notable things I have gone through this draft document. And one interesting thing is this draft is not setting a predefined notion. Okay, this has to be learned. Actually, this is just setting a guidelines for the future references. Okay, how we have to develop a curricula. So this is just a set of instruction or the guidelines. This can't be considered as a predefined set of learning outcomes as per my information. And when I was going through the draft document and what was the objective of this LOCF, it's clearly visible that the idea is to bring Bhartiya or the Indian knowledge system into the academia, and the next is to bring the local content, as Professor K.N. Ganesh was talking about. Kerala government has rejected the Indian knowledge system and they're trying to bring the Kerala knowledge system. Okay, it's good actually, because when we are learning about the local feelings or the local culture, it gives more importance. So this kind of exercise are being continuously doing, and being an researcher in the curriculum, because we always seek for a change, right? Because our syllabus, our curriculum, these all are in a stagnated position. So we also need a change in these aspects. And few things I have noted because I was going through the some of the controversies happened on this subject. So one was about the inclusion of VD Savarkar's book 1857 War of Independence. So technically, as of now, no one has denied the fact he has written in the book. Even if I'm not wrong, this is the only book in the history of India which got banned by the Britishers before it got released. And even Bhagat Singh in his diaries of the from his jail, he has mentioned he got the motivation for the freedom struggle from this book. And even from the sources, it is saying that even Subhash Chandra Bose ji used to distribute this book to his Indian to his army people at the time. So bringing like discarding few of the historians or the eminent figures of the Bhartiya independent struggle, this can be only considered as a mere political drama by few of the people, because if I'm not wrong, in the governance and polity course, MA governance and polity course offered by the Kannur University, there arose a controversy 3 years back, if I'm not wrong, where there were the lessons of Golwalkar, Deen Dayal Upadhyay, VD Savarkar, and later on few of the organization were protesting, and in the 2 months time a committee was formulated and a new syllabus was revised. Revision is okay, I'm totally agreeing, but interestingly, the names I have mentioned was there in the new syllabus, but the reading materials got changed because Christopher Jefferlet is talking about VD Savarkar or Golwalkar, same as the Kanchan Illaya is talking about these people. So we can understand, right, what type of knowledge they tries to bring through their books. So that's it from my side for in this round. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Shravan, for putting your views in this subject. So let me come to others. So others here, Mr. Shravan is saying that the whole exercise to put a kind of India-centric education in our undergraduate courses, and it's very flexible. That's what he says when responding to the points raised by both the professors. So, what is the view? I mean, why were you protesting against LOCF among the students in various central universities? What are your main grievances against this?
First of all, the UGC should scrap and revise this LOCF draft. Why we are saying like this that the education must remain free from political interference, and it should encourage critical thinking and also the rational inquiry, and also it should develop the scientific temperness. If we are going through this LOCF draft, it is propagating the pseudoscience, and also they are distorting the history. The thing is that another point that I want to mention is that it is unconstitutional because the article 51 AH of the constitution is saying that it is a direct principle that it's the duty of every citizen to propagate the scientific temperness. If you are going to these LOCF draft, we can see unscientific temperness, and also they are propagating pseudoscience as science. The other thing is that if you are, we don't know what is the relation between the Saraswati salutation and this chemistry. We don't know what is the relation between Savarkar, his role of Savarkar's role in the freedom struggle. So in a political side, they are including Savarkar and also Deendayal Upadhyay. We know the history of Savarkar. He is the person who had written more than 8 apology letters to the British government. The panelists had mentioning that his book have been banned, but maybe his book have been banned, but he is getting regular wages from the British government. So this is the thing. Why using this? We can't see the course. So we can't see the subject or the lessons of Bhagat Singh. We can't see the lessons of Chandrasekhar Azad. We can't see the lessons of Subhash Chandra Bose. So their aim is that they are using this LOCF to propagate pseudoscience. Also, they want to rewrite the history. So on that aspect, they are putting. And we don't know in that course. It is mentioned that in the lessons of Savarkar, the outcome of studying the Savarkar's book should be that the students will be aware of about the revolutionary will of Savarkar. So this is in history the revolutionary will of the Savarkar is he is the person who had betrayed the Indian freedom movement. In every subject, if you are going to chemistry, that I had mentioned that it starts with the salutation, with and it is mentioning that they want to propagate ancient chemistry. So in other thing is that they are saying that they are propagating that the glorious history of the Vedic era. So we know that the period of what they are mentioning that Vedic era, where the upper class only have the right for the education. So they are glorifying that. They are saying that in economics they are putting Ramarajya and things from Mahabharata and this Ramayana. I don't know what is the relation between the economics and the Ramarajya. And also, if you are going to each subject in math, they are saying that Vedic maths, and they are saying that in geometry, the students should get the students should study geometry from Dhula Sutra and also from Bhaskaracharya's Leelavadi. And also, like this, they are proposing in commerce, they are saying that Indian management from Bhagavad Gita and Ramayana. And also in Vedic technique, they are saying that Yantra, Shugla, from maths, they can get the knowledge of maths from Rangoli. I don't know what is the relation between these things. So their agenda is that they want to propagate scientific and pseudoscience things in our curriculum, and also they want to rewrite. It's not start from this LOCF draft. In previous 2 3 years, if you are going to the NCRT textbook, we can say that they are cutting the lessons of who are propagating the idea of secularism, and they are against this. They are against the diversity of our country, and they want to propagate this type of pseudoscience, and also they want to dismantle the progressive sense of our education system. Because of that, we are protesting against this LOCF. It is mentioned in the public notice. It is mentioned that this LOCF draft have been proposed by the direction of the National Education Policy 2020. At the time of the National Education 2020 itself, we pointed out that this National Education Policy is to centralize and to communalize and to commercialize the education system. So at that time, the only organization who welcomed that National Education Policy is the Sangha Parivar and the Sangha Parivar affiliated organization. So at that time, the teacher wing of the Sangha Parivar say that 60% of their recommendation was there in the National Education Policy. If you are going to this LOCF draft, we can see their 100% of their recommendation. So it is against the scientific temperness of our education. Because of that, we will protest against that, and we are demanding the UGC to revise and also to scrap the LOCF draft.
Thank you, Mr. Radas. I think we can have another round of quickly a couple of questions based on. So, Professor Navneet Sharma, Shravan was pointing out that this is also a decolonizing exercise of education. This LOCF is an attempt towards that. And what exactly should be done to decolonize our education system? What is your view on the points raised by both the student leaders on this?
Then I empathize with what one of the fellow wrote, and let's look at this issue with more academic perspective rather than the ideological perspective, because one of the fellow wrote that you invited 3 Marxist and 1 ABVP fellow, and this is not fair. So let's not get into Marxist versus ABVP debate. We are here to talk about is an academic enterprise, and what this academic enterprise is doing with the classrooms of India. Like I'm saying that we need to decolonize. Yes, we need to decolonize, but can we copy from Dublin and Bologna to decolonize Indian education? Again, we are going to Europe. You want to fight Macaulay, and you are going to Italy, and you are going to Ireland. Do you think that there are no Indian academics who can think of learning outcomes? You have to copy it. You have to plagiarize a document. Do you think there is no Indian intelligentsia? Forget about Indian intelligentsia. Do you think that even RSS doesn't have intelligentsia to write independently? You have to copy it. Is RSS doesn't have any education people to write on pedagogy or learning outcome. You are copying blatantly from Dublin descriptors and Bologna process. And then you say that you are decolonizing. Like I don't see that there is a problem reading any concept. You can read Prince also by Machiavelli, and you can read Kautilya's Arthashastra also simultaneously. The idea is that what we are doing in our classrooms, these learning outcomes will take away the ability to question in the classroom. That is what is more problematic. The problem is that you can read B.D. Savarkar, you can even read Guru Golwalkar in the class, but the independence to ask question will be taken away by this learning outcome. It is not a problem that what you read. The problem is that how you read, how you are going to make your citizens think, how you are going to assess and evaluate them. This learning outcome is not only about, definitely, there is a debate about what is India, what is Indian knowledge. India and Indian knowledge is not only about Hindutva, and there is a difference between Hindutva and Hinduism. I am not contesting that. Kancha Elaiya is equally Hindu. There is a beautiful book by Kancha Elaiya, Turning the Pot, Tilling the Land, Why I Am Not a Hindu. If you want to bring in that into Indian knowledge system, you are more than welcome. But you will not include Kancha Elaiya because he is not Brahminical. There is a difference between Indian knowledge system and Brahminical knowledge system. What is being pushed is a Brahminical knowledge system. There is a difference between Indian knowledge system and indigenous knowledge. No one is denying value of indigenous knowledge, but do you want, and has it been added that how to rear wool from a sheep? This is also a skill, how to rear a wool from a sheep, how to skin a dead animal. But these skills are not taught because they are not Brahminical. They are equally Indian. But what we are doing with idea of India is that is what is problematic is. Do you think that there was no development of Indian knowledge system for the 800 long years after ancient India? And from ancient India, we directly jumped into the modern India. There was no medieval India. There was no Kabir. There was no Nanak. There was nothing to learn. There was no Sufism to learn from that. So after ancient India, there is 2014. So there is nothing in between to learn from. The problem is that we make it political to appear political, but it is very academic problem that we are creating in our classrooms. We are creating huge gaps. There is no problem is making someone India centric, but what an India has to be, that India, if you want your citizens to be universal, this LOCF says that we want to evolve global citizens. It is very fine. We should be global citizens. But you can't simultaneously teach to hate your Muslim neighbor and then to become a global citizen. You hate your Muslim neighbors and then you want to become a global citizen. You are killing people on the choices of their food. It is not a problem that you teach dharma. The problem is that you don't want people to question the role of the king. That is what is the problem. There is no problem reading Gita, but the problem is that you take it as an absolute knowledge. Then probably we are going to be on the same side where people take Quran as the absolute knowledge. So are we in the world to create fanatics and fundamentalists? And if that is what LOCF is intended to do, then probably neither as a Marxist nor as an activist, I have problem with it as a pedagogue. I have a problem with it as an academician. So that is what we need to think and reflect upon.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma. Professor Ganesh, as as a policy, what should be the alternate way to make our higher education more modern, more contemporary, at a time incorporating the values and lessons we had in our past? What is an alternative way to make this possible? What do you think? So you're muted.
Yeah. Am I audible? Okay.
Yes, yes.
First of all, I think that the whole question is that of the difficulty in some of the pronouncements that has been made now is the question of what is called a knowledge system. Now, something called Indian knowledge system, and then you put forward something called Indianness and call it decolonizing, etc. You're talking about knowledge. You're talking about knowledge which humanity as a whole uses. And therefore, knowledge is something, particularly scientific knowledge in general, is ecumenical in one sense. So this kind of science actually, or any kind of knowledge system actually works in an ecumene where every society, every group of people in the world actually make use of that knowledge and make use of that knowledge in whatever way they can make use of it. So which means that there is no such thing called an Indian knowledge system or a Bhartiya knowledge system or anything of that kind. Instead of that, we have got only knowledge that is growing, human knowledge that is growing, that is critically examining itself and proceeding further, which means that many of the content that we actually can incorporate from earlier periods should be incorporated, and we move forward incorporating all that can be incorporated from an earlier period. As I said earlier, this question of Kautilya's Arthashastra. See, I have been taught history from a university which you just mentioned, and I have been taught Kautilya's Arthashastra there. There is no problem in my learning Kautilya's Arthashastra. One has also been familiar with, for example, Smritis and Dharma Samhitas in the same fashion, through which Kautilya's Arthashastra has been taught. There is nothing wrong with, for example, learning anything that is from a bygone era. But the question is that to develop the kind of critical faculty by which you examine whatever that has been learned, reject whatever that is totally outside our purview, or the reject that has been actually outdated, and accept that has been actually can be incorporated. This is the principle by which scientific knowledge grows, and this is the principle which we should accept. That is the first point which I would like to make. Which means that a political science or any course can have, for example, commerce system, they can actually introduce the trading systems of the old period. There is nothing wrong with it. Actually, there have been very important studies that have been made on ancient trade and market in early empires, which has been incorporated into courses on history as well as on economics also. It is quite possible. But the point is that then when we learn it, we actually learn to criticize them also. That is where I agree with Professor Sharma when he talked about critical inquiry as the basis of knowledge. It is in this question of critical inquiry that we actually lack. When you actually introducing the same thing in a learning objective kind of condition, the critical inquiry will become missing, which means that myth gets accepted as reality and reality gets accepted as myth. That is why I mentioned that there is a travesty of knowledge. That is another point which I try to maintain. Third point is that is where I come to the whole question of education or politics, whatever you said. That is the topic of this thing. See, one thing which is important is that I'm not going by Marxists or anything of that kind. One may have one's positions which I retain to oneself. But the point here is that all the political systems that have grown, whether it is Marxism, socialism, capitalism, liberalism, whatever it may be, any kind of that kind of thing will have to be studied and understood by a student. Which means that there has to be openness in actually trying to understand knowledge. And also this also means that a thing which is called Indian should be accepted in one sense, in the sense that it should be critically inquired. Similarly, the Indianness will include also, for example, the contributions of Islam. For example, when you talk about Kautilya's Arthashastra, a similar text has been made in the time of Akbar, which is called Aini Akbari, which is a similar kind of a role that it has played in the creation of the Mughal state. And this Aini Akbari will have to be taught in the same fashion. You cannot reject it saying that it is a Muslim text. It is not a Muslim text, in fact. It was actually being made by a person called Abul Fasal, who actually belonged to a different kind of Sufi school and is not a proper Muslim text in that sense. But Aini Akbari, if you want to teach Kautilya's Arthashastra, then Aini Akbari will have to be taught. It is there that the whole question of this slogan of decolonizing becomes useful, because if, for example, if you want to decolonize, this means that any text which is being brought by a Muslim or a Hindu or anybody in pre-colonial India will have to be studied in the same fashion, accepted or rejected because it doesn't suit our conditions. If it will have to be rejected, that is how science has proceeded. That is how we should proceed with our knowledge. And finally, the whole question of knowledge dissemination, which is pedagogical aspect. The pedagogical aspect cannot be based on cannot be based on learning objectives. There I perfectly agree with Professor Sharma, because learning objectives do not actually encourage critical inquiry. If, for example, you have to if you have to introduce critical inquiry, then you cannot go by learning objectives. You are going to go by actually a different style of learning, which is critical inquiry itself. Students should be made to think critically and try to construct their knowledge on the basis of criticism of the existing knowledge. As he pointed out, you have to discover points of departure. You have to discover, for example, variations. Only by discovering points of departure and variations that you can actually build new knowledge. That is where the whole question of this veracity or logic of this learning objective kind of situation will have to be looked into. If, for example, if you accept learning as a system of information, and that is about all, then there is no distinction between myth and reality. There is no distinction between different kinds of knowledge, which means that you actually do not actually build any knowledge, nor build any critical inquiry. There it has a different kind of political meaning from what exactly had been our politics. If, for example, if you want to have democratic politics, if you want to have free democratic politics of critical inquiry, then obviously learning objectives, I'm afraid, will stand in the way of that particular kind of developing a democratic society.
Thank you, Professor. Shravan, quickly, like nobody in this panel is against bringing Indianness or decolonizing the education, but the whole question is about the contextualization or contextualizing what was there and what is there and what we need. So, so what is your take, like, I mean, on this creating a division, that those who are asking questions against the way LOCF is being brought or the way textbooks are being framed are against a particular ideology, are against a particular religion or something. So how do you see this? How can the future generation take forward? See, one of the questions we have from the audience is that let me read that out. Will this LOCF make students a global citizen? It's asked by Surabhi Sharma. Will that make the students a global citizen and help them accommodate with the 21st century? Will placements be aligned to LOCF? Or just all disciplines be treated as history class or every subject discipline? So this is one of the questions. The question is, like, I mean, we have a huge unemployment. You are a student. You know how about the placements which are taking place in HCU or in any other university. Globally also, we are facing a kind of economic distress, a kind of recession which is going on. So will this help a student to be more skilled and get, as Ms. Surabhi is asking, a placement while he or she passed out of the uh, college or university. So, what's your take?
Yeah. So first of all, sorry that three of the participants are not agreeing with my statement. My dear friend from the SFI panel, he is totally against inclusion of the content also. As he have mentioned. Okay. So just note it down. So actually, as Surabhi Sharmaji was asking, so in the LOCF document itself, there is a section, right? So why there is an multidisciplinarity or the interdisciplinarity we are bringing to the academia? Why we have brought the professionalism? I can't say totally, but the vocational type of education or the skill oriented type of education into this LOCF. Because if you open the LOCF document, there is an option, because there is an core courses, elective courses, and after that there is an option to select the skill oriented courses. So through that, at least we are getting an aptitude to which domain we should travel forward. And obviously through this multidisciplinarity or the interdisciplinary we are discussing about from the national education policy, it gives the students the opportunity to explore wider area, especially for the global city, for the global making a person globally rich to critically analyze the situation. Because for example, the concept is, for example, I am a person who basically I am a person who did my bachelor's in physics, and later on I did MA in education, later on I did the PhD in education. So technically, if I am moving forward, I can, because as I am having the dual skill sets over the two subjects, I can imbibe these ideas and move together for the research or other purpose. So technically, and as the LOCF document is talking about, it is giving the scope for the skill set, because I'm not talking about the term placement, because this draft can't guarantee anyone's placement, right? But it can enrich that our knowledge. And one more thing to add immediately, because as all of us know, this the policy making is a long lasting process, and we can't expect a result from 2 or 4 years. Even the points which have mentioned in the Kothari Commission report is still pending, because many of the points are not, many of the objectives of that policy are not yet fulfilled. So this is an collaborative effort of the academicians, research scholars, students, and even the parents. So, and my only appeal to all the panelists is, instead of creating the binary in the opinions, okay, obviously the binary has to be there to have an healthy academia, but still let us have the suggestions to move forward and to how to contribute for the nation building process. That should be the thought we all should be having. That's it.
So, has ABVP submitted its observations to this LOCF to the UGC?
Yeah, because time is still there. We have prepared the draft and kept it, because we have a set of more recommendations to be given to the committee, and we will be giving it. Yeah, obviously,
Thank
because
you.
Just
whenever
a, just
UGC,
a,
yeah, so one minute.
just
So
a
when
query. What is more that you are recommending from ABBP? What are your more recommendations on this?
that will be discussing later, right? So because our team is in discussion with this process, no, because already the Indian knowledge content is included, but still there are more theories which has to be included in this process.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Shravan. Let me, others, I know you are in a hurry, you have to go. So before that, let me put you a question from one of our viewers, Ankit Gupta, who asked, can the UGC's draft LOCF be misused for ideological manipulation by ruling parties by making changes in the curriculum as per their ideological inclination, potentially having dire implications for academic freedom? This is, I think, probably one of the issues you had raised earlier. So, what is your take on this as a concluding remarks from your part on this? Yeah, you're muted. You're muted. I'm sorry.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, 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 yes. So our criticism is also like that, because if you are going to this draft, if you are going to the subject that and these courses, we can't. They are not propagating this critical thinking. If you're in every course they had suggested some books and some authors, but if you are going to these authors and books, the thing is that these authors and these books are something biased. Because if the student is going through these courses, is through going through this reading through these authors, they will not get that critical mind. Our main critique is that it is biased. All the courses, if you are going in some subject, we can see that it is propagating that type of a biased way. Like the RSS, we can feel it, their ideology in all these in these texts and these courses. So this is our thing, and also in the one another thing is that in the name of this text in chemistry, what they are included is that one of our panelists also mentioned it, that by a chemistry student after completion of the 4 year, so they will get an additional skill that the bakery, food processing, bakery, and also the this like this thing. So these type of things are very irrelevant. So their view is that they will not provide the higher education, or they will not provide this research thing for the student. So after their education, you can go to this type of bakery thing or like a food processing. That type of the thing is that they are adding some irrelevant courses. And the other criticism that we want to put forward is it's a bias, and they want to propagate their ideology through this LOCF trap.
Thank you, Mr. Adarsh. And to conclude, Dr. Sharma, I have a question from one of our viewers, Jyoti Raina. The question is that does the hurried inclusion of ideas from a context very different from the context in which academic disciplines such as anthropology or chemistry develop, in some ways undermines disciplinary knowledge that is presented to young undergraduates? You have already answered some of these issues, but to conclude the discussion, can you please add a little bit about this? And
Really, like what I have been saying time and again, that if the government wants to decolonize, they are welcome to decolonize. We are also against. We are also very much for the decolonization. But again, that for decolonization, you need to think independently, an Indian way, an indigenous way. You can't copy it from Bologna. You can't copy it from Dublin descriptors. So the learning outcomes which were designed in Europe 20 years ago, you have copied them, and then you are saying that you are decolonizing them. Anyone can look for them on the internet. Like what we are doing is exactly we are weakening the understanding of the discipline. Like you may want to push your ideological agenda, you push it, but don't play with the future of the coming generation. They need to have that criticality, they need to have that global mind, they need to have that understanding of education and pedagogy. And the idea, like what when Tagore said, we need to have universities where the mind is free and the head is held high. If we want that kind of university, what Newman said about university, university should be a place where diverse ideas come to a discussion. You can't have discussion unless there is diversity of ideas. And now saying that we are bringing the diversity, look at any LOCF. I don't know whether Shravan has read National Higher Education Qualification Framework or not, because there is no specific LOCF document separately. There are the syllabus of the different subjects. The core route is in the National Higher Education Qualification Framework and National Credit Framework. So their problem lies there, that whatever we are planning to do create a will create a kind of a monolith. It will create a kind of one kind of people. Like we are trying to decide that what everyone should think, we are trying to decide what everyone should like, we are trying to decide that what everyone should wear, we are trying to make zombies out of our students. So there is one comment by Jayanti Datta. She says that the students are sitting like dead zombies, and it is not because no Hindutva was getting taught to them. Like ABVP also needs to understand. that when the so-called syllabus was taught, still they had the cadre, because Indian universities had that propensity to evolve diversity of dialogue. Don't kill that diversity of dialogue. That is what we'll do with this learning outcome. That is what we'll do with the National Higher Education Qualification Framework. Someone was asking me this. There is a one group of teachers in Delhi University, which is known as NDTF, National Democratic Teachers Front, which is the teachers front of the Sangha Parivar. And all of their cadre got appointed during the Congress regime. I am saying that welcome the ideas of anyone else who can think otherwise. Don't say that my idea is the only idea. And there are so many problematic ideas like value added courses, skill enhancement courses. Your ideas of values and skills are so Brahminical in nature. You still think that the skills are typing on the laptop skill is equally to dead and to skin a dead animal. What do you think that you teach values in higher education? By the time a child has spent 18 years in the school and has come to BA, she or he has a baggage of values, has a baggage of culture. By adding all these courses, you are weakening the discipline. When you are assigning credit to such trivial courses, you are weakening the discipline. The understanding of discipline is getting misplaced. So that is what LOCF is going to do. That is more succinctly said in some Urdu couplet, that what LOCF will do. Na khuda hi mila na visale sanam na idhar ke rahe na udhar ke hum. And that is what probably they want to make out of us. That we are neither will become global nor we will remain Indian. And it is not the job of the universities to create vote banks for any party. This is not the job of a classroom. Do that. Every party does that, but do that outside the classroom. Yes, knowledge has a neutral character. Learning and constructing knowledge does have a neutral character, where every kind of knowledge comes from all sides of windows. When Gandhi said that, he said that I want a school where every kind of knowledge will come to the classroom. And we are restricting that by pre-deciding the learning outcome. We are restricting that only this outcome which goes by my ideology will only be the only outcome.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma. And I think, yeah, Shravan, you said you had. Please go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, just one closing comments from my side. Actually, the ideas or the throwing out the terminologies like Brahminical, patriarchal, food freedom, choice of food, killings, you can throw all these lies in front of the people. People and society know what Akhil Bharati Vidyarthi Parishad and its organizations are. And one of the fellow, I got, there is a comment, right? And even Dr. Navaneet was talking. Our classes are dirt, students are sitting like zombies, and degrees are far. I can't totally agree with this type of statement comparing students with the zombies. In Indian classrooms are still active. Obviously, there is an there is a bit shortage of students attending the classroom. From ABVP sides, we are putting forth many efforts to bring back students to the classrooms. And one of the interesting idea behind why we have developed this LOCF, where we are linking the local knowledge or the local learnings with the syllabus, is bringing back students to the classroom, that because they can relate something to the local content. Because if I am learning something, I can relate something to the society, so they will feel something bit interested to learn. So that's all. Yeah, namaste.
Thank
Just
you.
a second.
Yeah, please, sir. Please. Yeah.
No, just responding to two things. One is the question of local content and local knowledge, because Kerala has been one of the states which has been actually experimenting with local content and local knowledge on a substantial scale in the classrooms, including the textbooks. And we have found that actually local content and local knowledge are basically what we have found is they are all related to the human life activity, which is all secular and democratic in nature. And their actual local content and local knowledge are cannot be differentiated into a particular religion or caste or anything. That is one thing. Second thing is regarding the whole question about global, skill learning, which some of the questionnaires have actually put forward. I think that, you see, if you want to really become global citizens, or if you want to really become skilled, I think you have got to update your knowledge. This updating knowledge means that, you see, knowledge is actually expounded on a substantially fast pace, in which there is a huge amount of information that is pouring in from all the places, as Professor Sharma was also pointing out, which means that you have got to really develop the nature of actually inquiring into this knowledge, developing critical inquiry, and trying to actually disseminate as well as distinguish between different kinds of knowledge, instead of being tied down by any kind of ideological or religious or whatever content that you want to have. That is the whole problem with all of us. If you want to see, you cannot replace critical inquiry with identity politics. You have to develop either critical inquiry or you have to develop identity politics. I support critical inquiry and not identity politics. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ganesh. Thank you, Dr. Sharma. Thank you, Shravan. Thank you, Adarsh. It was, I think, it was a very good debate on this issue. I'm sure students, faculty members, policymakers would watch this debate and submit their responses to the UGC at the earliest. And I also hope that the UGC will hear all these suggestions and make the framework more in tune with our needs of the students. So it should be more student centric. So the debate on the uniformity and other things must go on. And I once again thank you on behalf of the Hindus education team for all the faculty members, all the student leaders, and our viewers. Thank you so much. Thank you.